What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Flyer and Ice, episode 15, brought to you by Heat Ratio Sports. I am Dan Green. Above me is the great Vance Crew and the great Nick Tosti. Vance, can you believe this is episode 15?
15 weeks have flown by really fast, man. I can't believe it.
It started off as pretty good hockey, exciting hockey, and it's turned into stuff that mulch smells like. That's how it's transitioned for us. But But on a positive note, I'm very pleased that we have Fuse Barbershop sponsoring our Puck Points. Fuse Barbershop is an amazing barbershop in Newtown, Pennsylvania, 2834 Eagle Road, Village at Newtown Shopping Center. I get my hair cut there. It's an incredible vibe. It's a rock theme. The wallpaper is amazing. I can't focus on my conversation with my great barber because I'm watching Neil Peart here. I'm watching Van Halen over there. It's just an amazing atmosphere. I encourage everyone to check out Fuse Barbershop. You will get 20% off your first service if you mention Flyer and Ice. Go to fusebarbershop.com and you can make your appointment and you can have a comment where you enter that, or you can just do it at the register. Mention Flyer and Ice. You'll get 20% off your first service and you'll just stay there. That's how much you'll like the barbers there. They're amazing. And the prices are reasonable to begin with. So we are proud to have Fuse Barbershop as our Puck Point sponsors. Speaking of Puck Points, Puck Point number one. Do you see us having any fight left, Nick? Are we going to play this roller coaster ride, or is there going to be almost like pressure's off and they're going to let their hair down and maybe play better, actually? What are your thoughts on any fight?
Well, with a couple of the bullet points that I had to talk about, how the season is wrapping up was actually one of those, and which is to see this team come out and play with heart with the last 11 games that we've got here. Above all else, we just want to, I think the fans just want to see this team not give up, right? So, they're, particularly, we've been beaten down, pretty hard since this March slide that we've all witnessed, after being in first place in the month of February. So, as frustrated as the fans are, where we are now, I still think that you're going to have fans go to the game and watch the last 11 games on television and hope to see them play with some heart.
No, that's all we can hope for. Vance, what are your thoughts on how they will play out this season?
I think they'll show heart. I think they have shown heart actually in the last couple games. They tried to battle back against the Capitals. They played a pretty good game against the Islanders the other day. I think, like you said, Dan, it's been a disappointing season. But, the main thing with this team is right now where they are, they're just not that good. And even if they come out and show heart, it normally results in a loss anyway. So,
right, and that's the other issue. Like you just referenced, they had a really we discussed it at length on our last post-game show. We had that game against the Islanders where I thought we outplayed them and should have won that game. Could have lost like that, be so deflating that you have one of these 6-1 type losses against the Rangers coming up. Or you don't think so. You'll just think they'll somehow battle through and just lose close games because they just can't get over the hump.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where they are right now. I think these guys have a lot of pride. There are a lot of veterans on this team. I know guys like Giroux and Van Riemsdyk and Voracek who have been in this uniform for quite some time. I know that it means a lot to them, even though they haven't had the results. And I think they also have a coach that's not going to – their coach is not a quitter. He's not going to let them quit. That's just not in the DNA of this organization. This organization is used to competing. So I expect them to show up and play hard up until the last puck drops.
All right. That's what we can only hope for because, we're going to do a few post-game shows, so we want to have something exciting to talk about. Nick, give me your impressions on, I believe, the 3 games Wade Allison has played, and then I'll go to you, Vance.
Well, I in my opinion, from what I see from him in these first 3 games is, you got a promising young hockey player that has all of the tools to do what he needs to do to compete as a top forward in this league. We have to see, one of the big criticisms we've had since I've been coming on to the show is how Vigneault is handling younger players. And I think that's going to be a big part of his progression, particularly ending the year strong. So, giving him the confidence into the offseason that he personally feels like he's someone that can contribute to this hockey team, and his confidence level, is strong enough that he can come in here next year and feel like he can be someone that contributes. But Dan, I mean, he checks, to me, he checks all the boxes. I think we all kind of agree on that. I mean, he's got a nice size to him. He has a good presence. He really, he skates hard up and down the ice. He gets back on defense. He makes the plays that he's supposed to make. I think he does all the things he's supposed to do, the little things, the little details that you're supposed to do as a hockey player to put yourself in a good position to make plays happen both offensively and defensively. And he's smart. You can see he's smart. He knows where to be. He doesn't really put himself in a position where he's lagging on his back check. And he does play a good 200-foot. I mean, he's up and down the ice, which is really nice to see. Almost kind of reminds me of like when Lawton came up here. Very, very similar style. But I think he's going to contribute more offensively. And I do think you're going to see him, I think he can be a top 6 forward on this team. We'll see how everything goes through free agency and whatnot, but I like it. It's one of the nice things to see, coming down this poor stretch here. He was one of the nice things, one of the nice parts of seeing at least some positivity come out of this team, since he's been up here.
No, I completely agree. If you're going to have this misery, you might as well benefit from seeing some of the youth give you some hope for next year. Vance, Nick pretty much said everything I was thinking. Is he indeed a lock to be a top 6 next year? Let's say we get the free agent signing or two that we so desire, maybe make a trade or two. Maybe there's somebody in the minors that really has a terrific training camp. Is he a lock to be in the top, to make the team next year? I'm not even going to say top 6. Is he a lock to make the team next year?
Oh yeah, I definitely think he makes the team. His skill is evident. To piggyback off of Nick, I like the way that he competes. He seems to be strong on his skate in front of the net. He skates well. I think he's definitely somebody that we should be looking to in the future to be a big piece to this team moving forward. The Flyers are not going to have a lot of money to spend. So, assuming that, they make a trade and they are able to go out and maybe get a left winger like a Landeskog or someone else to come in and help them out. You could be looking at him as a top 6 player on this team. Maybe, between him and a guy like Morgan Frost, who we've all seemed to forget about because he's been injured. But I like what Allison gives them. He gives them an element that they actually need, that they haven't had. He looks like he's a tough guy and he's tough to defend down low. And that's actually what they need.
No, I agree. I think we're 3 for 3 on this one. That we've been craving to see this kid, and he's checked all the boxes, and he's showing us what we were hoping to see. Scored a goal in his second game, so it's not dragging on. So hopefully he'll be a positive light the rest of the way. And building on that, do you guys anticipate, other than York, and cross our fingers, definitely York being the last significant call up, Nick, will this be it for us to see our final, we can't wait to see kind of player?
I do. I mean, there's been talk about Cates. The
older Cates, Jackson Cates, right?
Jackson Cates, right? Yeah. Exactly. Noah's brother. I don't know. I mean, I've seen some scouting reports on him over the years, and Not to say that he could be a contributor to this organization somewhere down the line, but I just don't see him coming out with the kind of spark and flash and energy and skill set like York. I mean, York is really the guy we're waiting for right now. He's the guy that we need to see, and I think he's the guy that people are probably most excited about coming up here. I think when you look at vacancies on this roster right now with young kids that might fill a few spots, and Vance nailed it. I had Frost written down on my notes too. He's somebody that we need to see a little more of. Hopefully, as a healthy hockey player. The big one is York. I mean, York could potentially be a generational defense, just a franchise defenseman for us. He's that good. He is that good. He's really, really good. He's got great offensive, a great offensive skill set to him. He's very sound defensively. He's not the biggest defenseman, but that, allows him to be a little bit more mobile. I think with, the bigger you get, maybe the less mobile you are, but maybe, I don't know. I mean, if that's true or not, but that seems to be the case. And with anyway, the bigger defenseman on our team, but, I think it's York, and that's it. I'm not excited really right now about anybody else coming up here that can make a real big impact, as a young player, towards the end of this year, finishing off these last 11 games. And then, what we'll see, going into the offseason and into next year.
No, I tend to agree with you. I think it's the Twarinskis and the Bunnemans of the world that might have a few up and down shuffling moments. Vance, I want to ask you something to build on what Nick said, and then Nick, you can interject as well. Erase your mind of how Provorov's played the last year. Where are you guys with your excitement for Provorov starting with the Flyers and York with the Flyers?
Me personally, I'm excited. I'm really excited to see York. Probably more excited to see York than I was with Provorov. Because when's the last time we've had an offensive defenseman in this town? Like, when's the last time that we actually had a guy, outside of Ghost, for the year that he did it, that could actually run a power play?
And it's full rounded in his game.
Right. So, I think I'm more excited to see York than I actually was with Provorov. When Provorov came up, and Provorov was, he was great when he came up. Was he in the juniors when he came into the Flyers? Did he come straight to the Flyers from juniors?
Yeah, he was playing out in the Western Hockey League.
Yeah, I think Provorov is a really good all around defenseman, but I'm excited to see a guy that could actually, run a power play and make the right decisions on offense to help get the guys in the right spots to score goals on the power play. I'm excited about that.
How about you, Nico? The arrival of Provorov, knowing that he was going to start playing from jump, and the arrival of Cam York, who's given you more energy?
Man,
because I was pumped, stoked, and I thought Provorov was, and I still think he's going to be here for 12 straight years, kind of guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And and you're making me excited for York, but Provorov, really, I was thrilled when we got him in the draft, knowing how deep that draft was.
I remember Provorov making a stretch pass when he was playing in juniors, and this was after he was already drafted. So I was kind of trying to watch him a little bit more, knowing that he was going to be somebody we were going to see on a regular basis. And I mean, it was like tape to tape, and it was like 100 feet. Like it was unbelievable. And it resulted in a goal and a breakaway goal. And so I was pretty excited about Provorov. I watched him a lot because their team had wound up going all the way to the finals. But York too. I mean, he's an American kid. I mean, he's from California. He's come up through the system. The National Team Development Program, and he's just so he's just a likable, like a guy. Whether he's playing for us or not, he's just a guy you want to see do well. He's just worked so hard to get where he's at, you know, and now, you know, finishing his career at Michigan and getting ready to put his stamp on the pro level. I've got high expectations for him, you know, and I think this city will and does. So I don't know. I think I'm equally excited, maybe in two different kind of ways. But to Vance's point, you know, we're starving for a point, for a power play captain, you know, somebody that can really just orchestrate the power play and put this team in a position to get some good shots, because we're really struggling there. And we've talked about that for the last 3 weeks since I've been with you guys. And so I think I'm 50-50. If I had to lean one way, who was I more excited about? I think it was probably Provorov, maybe with just a
Listen,
hair.
there's no right or wrong answer. I
Yeah.
mean, it's yeah. I just it was a curiosity thing.
Yeah,
Now,
that's a tough one though, Dave.
yeah,
That was
it makes for good podcasting. Now, Nick, I need you to help me with a judgment call here. Now, we love Vance Crew. I mean, he's silky smooth. He's brilliant with his sports knowledge. But is he violating a rule right now, Nick?
range. At first, I thought it was a Sixers jersey or a Sixers t-shirt that. And then he sat up. I was like, "Oh, oh man,
that's rough. That's rough, man.
We're playing that team two straight games.
How do I say? Oh man, he's such a good guy.
He's a teddy bear, and
How do you say a bad thing about him? Like he's just so
I know. But by law, it's like a guy wearing Crocs.
At least it's
Or
not
a guy wearing
Uggs.
It's
not a Penguin shirt.
It's a violation.
So Dan, listen, you know how big of a hockey fan I am, man.
I know.
So, you know, I figured I'd spice it up a little bit and wear a different team shirt.
Is that Ryan Callahan on the back?
This is a Mark Messier.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. All right. I'm totally good with that.
All right. Since it's a circa, I'll give it to you.
No modern day.
All right.
No modern day guys.
I got you. It's just they're playing the Rangers tonight and tomorrow. Anyway, we'll move on. We love Vance. So, a huge thing for us is what will this offseason look like with free agency. So I'm going to pull up a list of the pending free agents that the NHL will be exposing to the Flyers this offseason, and who might the Flyers have an interest in, who should the Flyers have an interest in. And we could make it pipe dreamish, or we could actually try to actually be number crunchers and see if we can find value guys that we could actually get. So let's try to put our heads together and see. We can have a pipe dream, one or two, but let's really try to target realistic value. And should we go on the premise, gentlemen, that the Kraken take a big salary off our hands, like JVR?
I think it's more realistic that the Kraken probably take Ghost if he's exposed.
That's 4 and change.
4.5.
Is he?
All right, so that's
he
where
able to
we're
be
finding a
protected?
target now.
Is
What was
Ghost
that?
able to be protected?
They could protect him if they wanted to.
Yeah, they're not going to.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's no way they're going to protect him. But anyway, all right. So let's go shopping at Target with a $4 million and change credit card. All right. Oh, I have to get rid of this fancy box for a second. All right. So the first guy on the list is Alex Ovechkin, and that's just a perfunctory thing that has to be put up there. He's not going to leave the Capitals unless he goes back to Russia, but I think he has too many more records to conquer, and he's not going to leave DC. So I'm not even going to count him. Vance, we had Chris Mayer on our show not too long ago, and he wants Dougie Hamilton. Dougie Hamilton made almost $6 million in his previous contract. Is it even realistic we can get him with what he's going to be? He's going to be one of the big fish in this market. What are your thoughts on Dougie Hamilton?
My personal opinion, what I think is going to happen in the offseason, they're going to expose some guys, of course, to the Kraken. The Kraken will take, one of those salaries off their hands, I believe, whether it's JVR or whether it's Ghost. And then I do think that they might be in a position to trade another big salary, possibly in the offseason, whether that be, what's his name, Jake. I know Jake has quite a few years left on his deal, but Jake is still a productive hockey player. So that's kind of my idea of what's going to happen. If that were to happen, then they would be able to sign a guy like Dougie Hamilton. I think he'd be a great fit. The Flyers only have two right-handed shots as defensemen, and everybody else is left-handed.
Yeah, Brandon Myers is it, and
Right. Looks left-handed too.
Right. Dougie Hamilton is still young. He's been productive on every team he's played for: Boston, Calgary, and Carolina. He's a really good player, and he's the type of presence that they don't have on their blue line right now. So, I think he'd be a really good fit if they were able to pull it off. To me, it just comes down to, where do you want to spend your resources? Do you want to spend your resources on a defenseman, or do you want to spend it on, a potential franchise center or winger
or sniper type player, right? I'm assuming, Nick, you have the same affinity for Dougie Hamilton.
I do. I mean, he's a stud.
Yeah.
And he's going to command big money.
That's the issue.
But I don't think he wants to. He doesn't sound like he wants to leave Carolina. I mean, if Carolina comes up with the money, the only reason why, we would have a chance at somebody like a Dougie Hamilton would be if Carolina just kind of hit their number and that was it, and he was still, he was, him and his agent are feeling like he's worth a little more. I keep going back to, I want an offense. I want an offense. I want a top center. I want a top center or a top winger. I really do. I mean, I'm ready to change things up a little bit. In my opinion, if it was me, I would go after, the next guy you got on the board there is Landeskog, and I don't want to steal your thunder on.
No, go ahead. Build on that.
I mean, he's on arguably one of the best lines I've ever seen. I mean, in 10 years, I'm hitting Rantanen and McKinnon. I mean, that's just like it's a dream line. And he's got all the experience. He's got the leadership. He's just an amazing hockey player. And I think he just kind of fits the Flyer mold so well. Like, just he's big. He takes the body. He's physical. He's skilled. He gets to the net. He plays defense. He is so good. He's so good. And, he's young. He's only 28 years old. I don't think he's going to leave Colorado.
I don't either.
If you look at these top players that you have on this list here. And then, the first four I'm looking at are probably going to re-sign with their current clubs at least. But, if somehow we could dangle a carrot and we had to throw out some money for a big free agent signing, I would like to see it be Landeskog over Dougie Hamilton. Not taking anything away. I mean, you can't sign. It would be impossible to sign both. But
right.
If you had to go in one direction or another, I've been pretty vocal about feeling pretty comfortable about the way this young core, this young defensive core we have is starting to play better, and they look better, and they all look like they're starting to get a little more acclimated to the speed of the game here. I'm okay with moving and bringing up York and maybe picking up another defenseman somewhere. I hope they keep Ghost, because he's really, I mean, he's opened my eyes over since they made that move of going on the waivers. He's really shown me a lot. I mean, he looks really good. But I would go Landeskog over Dougie.
No, I agree. And the unfortunate thing is both players want to stay where they're at. Colorado has the cap space to make it happen with Landeskog, and the Flyers aren't in the position to just blow anyone out of the water and say, I love you, Colorado, but geez, look what they're offering over here. It's unfortunate we're stuck there. I'm The ship on Taylor Hall has sailed. I think he's going to stay a Bruin, and he's going to cost too much money. Do we have now? Nugent Hopkins fits the bill too, Nick and Vance, for what we need and potentially want. So I'll let you guys, Vance, jump on Ryan Nugent Hopkins.
Yeah, former number 1 overall pick. You know, he's turned out to be a decent pro player. I'm not sure. You know, he doesn't really have the production for you to give him a big deal. You know, in my opinion, I think he'd be a useful player, but I think he'd be a more useful player on another team for the contract that he's gonna want. I think the Flyers need a real difference maker, and if it's not Dougie Hamilton or Gabriel Landeskog, I don't see paying Ryan Nugent Hopkins a ton of money. I just don't. That's just my opinion.
Nick?
So he's the guy I have circled as the guy to sign. I mean, he is, like Van said, number 1 pick. I mean, playing in Edmonton in a big hockey bubble out there. He's skilled. He's matured since he's been in the league. Playing with McDavid. So I mean, I think he could come here and actually say, I can take that whole experience of being in Edmonton and being on a line with McDavid and, what I learned out there and bring that West Coast style here to the Flyers. Cause that's really what we're looking for. I mean, we're looking for a guy that can be dynamic and, he was a number 1 overall pick for a lot of good reasons. I mean, Edmonton was going, how many number 1 picks did they have, by the way?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. They had a stretch, and I can't give you the years in the order. They had Hall, Nugent Hopkins, Eberle, Nail Yakupov. All these guys year after year after year, they kept getting like a top 3 pick in the draft. And it's amazing they didn't do anything with it. And then of course they had a little hiatus, and then all of a sudden they land McDavid. So they've been blessed with having potential generational talent that they haven't done anything with.
Yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy I have circled right now. He's a big name. He's a guy that can bring some excitement. He's a different kind of player. We don't have a Ryan Nugent Hopkins on this team right now. And that's what we're looking for. And I think you'd be paying on a potential is not, I don't want to use the word potential because we know what he can do, but I think him in a new situation where he is not in the shadows of McDavid, playing with maybe Giroux or Konechny or both of those guys, that could be the line that could be, that could elevate our first line into potentially, one of the top 10 top lines and first lines in the league.
So Nick,
go ahead, Vance.
So here's what scares me. The Flyers went out and they spent that money on Kevin Hayes, that $7.5 million a year. I really feel like their next move, if it's going to be, with a free agent, I'd rather go out and get a guy on a shorter term deal.
Right.
Maybe around the same age with a similar skill set. Because Nugent Hopkins is going to cost you. He's going to cost you some money, I think.
Oh, there's no doubt.
What'd you say, man?
I was just going to say, man, you're too good at being the voice of reason, Vance. Like, I am definitely going more with my emotions and trying to get him in here. You are truly thinking like a general manager of a hockey team. Yeah, that's a really good point. We're how many fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, or fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And that's true. We keep like getting locked into these long-term contracts, but I feel like he is the kind of player that would fulfill the role and fulfill the value of a contract like that. And then, it's always a chance. I don't compare him to Hayes. I wouldn't, even when we did that deal with Hayes, I didn't feel like, he was someone that was worth all that money for that long a period of time.
Yeah.
I thought I was wrong last year, based off his production and the way he played. And, it at that point seemed like it was a good deal, but man, I'd like to know why he's fallen out of favor so quickly in such a short amount of time, and wondering if Vigneault is, another contributor to that. And I keep going back to that that the coaching needs to be held accountable for this collapse. I mean, the team was in first place in February. You know what? That's not. It's the same team. I mean, the talent level still is what it is.
But they haven't looked right all year.
Yeah.
Right. Record aside, they just have not looked right all year.
Right.
But really, getting back to what Vance said, we all agree that a 28-year-old Nugent Hopkins is better than a 28-year-old Voracek, for example. Would we agree with that?
Yes.
Probably.
Okay. So we have Voracek that has 3 or 4 years left on $8 million a year that he signed probably when he was 28 years old. Vance, your fear is that he'll be an albatross down the road with a similar contract when he's 33, 34 years old.
Right. Where I'm at with the Flyers right now is there comes a point where you can't keep doing the same. You can't keep doing the same thing. You've got a group, and you still have to pay Couturier. You've got a group of guys.
Develop your own a little bit.
You got a group of guys that you spent a ton of money on, and they're still like some of them are still in the middle. Voracek has 3 or 4 more years left on his contract. To me, I think my personal opinion about free agency is if you can't get one of the top, either Hamilton or Landeskog, you go and get a guy like maybe a Jayden Schwartz on a prove it deal or something like that, who's a good player, not a superstar or anything like that, but a guy that fills a role. But I think the way that the Flyers have to move is they either have to commit to a long-term rebuild, or the only option is to go out and trade for a star. I'd be more excited about going out and trading for a star and giving up assets to get a guy like Jack Eichel than I would with paying Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, $7 million for 6 years. That's just my opinion.
No, and the next guy who you would think could fit the bargain basement type of player is Philip Deneau, but he's already turned down a 6-year, $30 million contract. That would make him age 34, making $5 million a year. Do you have any interest in dangling carrots in front of Philip Deneau?
Me personally, I don't think so. How about you, Nick?
He's not a bad player.
He's not. I mean, and he's a good two-way player, which is, really, I think where a lot of my criticism has come.
Correct.
In the last couple of weeks is the way our forwards have been playing defense. I mean, but I'm on this kick. I really want to go big or go home in free agency or down the trade route. I want to see a franchise player come in here, at the forward position. I mean, look at what we've been witnessing over the last 2.5 months. It's I don't want to suffer another 2 or 3 years watching this offensive core because we don't have anybody else coming up in the system that you're able to plug in that's gonna replace anybody in the top, anybody on the roster really. So Deneau, yeah, I mean I feel like I would be settling there. I mean, you could plug him in. We're gonna need a free agent signing. I mean, we are. I mean, there's just Obey Kubel, I think, will not be on this roster next year. He'll be back down in Lehigh. Actually, should be anyway. I don't when I say he won't, but so you're gonna need to fill that spot. You're not gonna see these younger guys like Torinsky and Bunneman, and that ship has sailed with those players. We know what they are. They're career minor leaguers. That's what they're going to be. I don't think Cates is Noah. I don't see any of these players that we drafted other than Frost coming up here and being able to make an impact right now. And
they're still developing. The Ratcliffes, the Stromes of the world, they're all still developing.
Yeah, I think they are who they are. And, when we talk about what the real needs are to make this team, gives this team some offensive firepower is gonna need a big name. It's gonna need a star, like you said, Vance. And if we have to do it through the trade, then we have to do it through the trade and figure out if there's a way to get Eichel in here, or really just throw the bank at Landeskog and or Nugent Hopkins.
Well, the next couple guys on our list, I skipped over Tatar. I have no interest in him. Mike Hoffman, damn good player. 31, underpaid for a player of his status, so I'm sure he's going to demand more. But again, you can't give this guy 3-4 years. It's again, you're going to be stuck with a potential albatross. And your guy, Jaden Schwartz, is next on the list. Now, he could maybe have a prove it kind of deal, right? He's always injury prone. So thoughts on those two guys?
So that was my thought on I like Mike Hoffman a lot. He's a guy that can actually shoot the puck.
Yeah.
He's got 13 goals on the year. But again, like you said, he's probably going to want to get paid at some point, and I believe he only signed a 1-year deal this year. Right?
At least $7-8 million he's gonna demand, I would think.
Right. Jaden Schwartz, I was impressed with him when I saw him play against the Flyers years ago.
He can fly.
St. Louis, and that always, left an impression on me. So I always liked the guy. And Brandon Saad is another one. He's another guy that he's got 14 goals this year. He's another guy that can skate like the wind and can really play. Those are the kind of guys that, I think that, Brandon Saad and Jaden Schwartz, you probably don't have to break the bank for them, and they can come in and help you.
Now, look at number 16 on this list. I'm a big Tyson Barrie fan. I like the way this kid plays. Now, Nick, yeah. And I don't know what he's going to demand financially. What are your thoughts on him, Nick? He's another power play guy.
Yeah.
Right-handed shot.
I don't know. I mean, he's 30 years old. He's he definitely looks like he's got some years left in him. I see Edmonton really re-signing. I don't know. Again, I mean, I keep getting back to I want an offensive player, and with York, how does he fit in with York coming in? And I don't. He's not on my list. We did skip over somebody who is on my list, and that's Krejci. And I mean, you can get him for probably 1 year. That's the thing. And no. He's just buried on a good team, and I think every time I watch Boston, he shows me something. Like he just he's got fire. He plays pretty hard.
He's often injured though.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, he is. But for 1 year, and if you can get him for a couple $1 million, if we're looking at somebody short term, but again, I'm conflicting with myself because I don't want that. I want the superstar. I want to see them. I want to see them make a big signing, a big forward signing.
All right, so I'll go through this list fast. I mean, Foligno's getting up there in age. I don't know what kind of money he thinks he can command, but he's a professional hockey player. Coleman is a consummate guy every team wants. There's some interesting names, but again, does Granlund jump out at you at all?
He does because Chuck Fletcher drafted him, I believe.
Exactly. That's why I knew you'd say that.
Yeah, he drafted him, and he's a pretty good player too. And there was some talk before the season that
he has wheels.
Flyers might have been interested in, so he might be someone to keep an eye on.
Yeah, so this is I guess a guy that maybe you see if you can. What would you say? 2 years, $10 million.
At 29, my guess is he's probably going to want at least 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and then you have it again. There you have the Voracek syndrome all over again. Mm-hmm. He excites you for a year, and then the back end kills the team.
Depends on what the cap hit is. I mean, if you got a guy like that for $3 million for 3 years, at $9 million, that's not a bad deal.
All right, thoughts on Iafallo?
I haven't really seen him much at all this year. Going back, I mean, he's a younger player. He was in that draft with Provorov, I believe, right? Or no, he's a little bit older than that.
No, he's like 2 years before that class.
Okay, so he was like right around the Lawton draft year. I mean, I think now we're at the point where it's just you're gonna get some depth players, which I think we have, and if all things considered, we are able to keep the majority of our players through the expansion draft and through free agency. I don't think he's a guy that I would go after.
The only thing that, and I kind of agree with you, but I want to go back to something Vance mentioned many shows ago that really has sunk in with me. We need team speed desperately. I mean, I don't know if there's any kind of metrics out there. I don't know if I've heard any kind of pundits reference like ranking of team speed in the NHL. I would venture the Flyers are one of the slowest teams in the league. If you can get Grantlund on the cheap, if you can get Iafallo on the cheap, you're adding team speed to they might be clones to some extent of what we already have, but they're faster versions of those type of players. But again, guys in their late 20s have probably won 4 or 5 year deals. That's the only problem. But Vance, are you in a kind of agreement? Like you get those solid players that are not going to cost $8 million a year, or increase team speed.
Yeah. So Chuck Fletcher said something in his presser a couple of weeks ago, and he said something about like not having the right mix or something like that. And that could mean a lot of different things. But to me, when I watch this team, my thought is if you can't improve the team by going out and getting a superstar, then what you do is you just add elements to your team that try to add pieces to your team that you don't have. Maybe a guy like Tanner Pearson, is a guy that can separate a guy from the puck. A guy like Brandon Saad is a guy that can really skate. Same with Jayden Schwartz. So to me, if you can't improve your team by going out and getting that big time player, then you add supplemental pieces, to improve your team, because it's really about creating space on the ice for your playmakers. And the problem with this team is right now they don't have any space because they don't have any speed, and they don't have guys that go into the corners and can dig out pucks. This team would benefit greatly from a guy like Hartnell or, Wayne Simmons now.
Yeah, we could turn back time.
We took those guys for granted for years, but now we're left with big players that don't play like big players.
No.
These guys all, the Couturiers, the JVRs, the Kevin Hayes, they all play a finesse game. They don't go and separate anybody from the puck. Those are the types of elements, the speed and the hitting. Those are the things that this team is missing outside of not having that one dynamic player to build around.
No, it's definitely a quandary that Fletcher has and we as fans have. We can have a roundtable discussion, and my opinion will change every 2 seconds. I agree with Nick. We still have so much young depth on defensemen. Maybe that's where we build within our system, and you go out and make the splash with the Landeskog's of the world or the Nugent Hopkins of the world. But I also agree that all these guys are in their late 20s, and I don't know if I want to give them $8 million a year for 5-6 years and have the Kevin Hayeses of the world around our neck again. So it's really tough. You just got to pray you hit on a guy that you can, if it's possible, you can project being like Dougie Hamilton. I can project being a player that can play well into his mid-30s, right?
Oh yeah,
like a Kimmo Timonen, like a Chris Pronger before his injury. You just knew these guys were steady into their mid to late 30s. Some of the other guy, and you usually don't get that with forwards, right? So you've tried to find a couple fast skating, bargain guys up front, and maybe try to swing for the fences with Dougie in the back, because I think he could play many years still. It's a tough call. It really is, and that's why we're not the GMs. But it'll be truly interesting. So unless you guys want to have any final points on free agents to be, we can start our next segment. Any closing points on that topic, gentlemen?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
All right. So we're all in agreement. It's tough decisions to be made, but there are players out there. So Vance, what time is it?
Time for the penalty box.
So on this segment of the penalty box, we're going to build on the topic we just discussed, free agents. But these aren't free agents that we've signed yet. These are free agents from yesteryear that turned out to be failed free agent signings. And we'll all give our opinions as to why they were. So the first player is Chris Gratton. Vance, talk to us about the infatuation Bobby Clark had with Chris Gratton and why he turned out to ultimately be a bust of a bust.
Yeah, Chris Gratton was actually he was a high draft pick by the Tampa Bay Lightning, a really, really good young player coming off a 30-goal season. Was a restricted free agent, going into the offseason in 1995. Bobby Clark was in love with him. He was, your prototypical Flyer player, bigger, stronger, was a nasty guy to play against, could hit. And like I said, he was a typical Flyer. So as a restricted free agent, Bobby Clark really wanted him, and he structured the contract in a way where Tampa Bay couldn't match it, and put, I guess, Phil Esposito, who was the GM at the time, in a really tough situation, to the point where he went to the league and pretty much complained about what the Flyers were doing, and he went as far as to trade Gratton to the Chicago Blackhawks.
Correct.
For Ethan Moreau, Keith Carney, and another player, I believe. I think the third player's name escapes me at this point. After the league reviewed the paperwork, it was determined that the Flyers deal was completed first. So the league awarded Gratton to the Flyers. So with that being said, the Flyers had to give up 3 consecutive first round picks, because he was a restricted free agent. That's what you do in the NHL.
Well, I think we gave up Renberg too, didn't we?
So what happened was they gave up the 3 first round picks first. And as a handshake deal, Tampa Bay, the Flyers traded Renberg and Dykhouse to Tampa and got those 3 first round picks back.
Right. Because I don't recall losing first. Yeah. Good.
Right. Yeah. So that's what happened. So Gratton came in, 5-year deal, $16.5 million, $9 million up front. And apparently he wasn't, it caused a stir in the locker room because Brenda Moore, I guess, was going to be bumped down to the 3rd line center. Gratton was going to be the 2nd line center. And there were a lot of guys there were a lot of guys on the team that weren't happy about, the Flyers going out and giving a player $9 million that hadn't been in the Flyers uniform, that they felt like hadn't earned it. So apparently there was a lot of tension in the locker room when it came. So his first year, when you think back on him, you think that he didn't really perform all that well, but his first year, he actually had 62 points, 22 goals, 40 assists, and 159 penalty minutes. By most standards, that's a pretty good season.
Yeah, he stuck up for his teammates.
Right. Yeah, I thought he had a pretty good season. But going into the next season, he was still a young player at that time, and it seems like he maybe had some difficulty in the locker room, maybe had some difficulty playing in Philadelphia. Got off to a really slow start. I think in his first 20 something games, he only had 8 points. The Flyers ultimately, I guess they looked at the situation and figured that, he wasn't worth the trouble and traded him back to Tampa Bay. I forget what the return was, but it was a small return that they got back.
I think we got Renberg back, actually.
Right.
Renberg and Dykhouse. No, Renberg and Langkow, I believe.
Langkow actually turned out to be a pretty good player.
Correct. We another guy we gave up on too early.
But yeah, I guess, to me, Chris Gratton, when I looked at his stats, he wasn't as bad as what I thought he was.
They just wanted him to be great. That's what they thought. No, that was a, Yeah, you're right, Vance. That was almost it wasn't a failed signing per se as much as he didn't live up to the hype kind of signing. And again, we didn't know the behind the scenes drama that was taking place. But real quick to Vance's story, Nick, Esposito literally tried to sneak out of the deal over claiming that the date was smudged on the facts and that should void the deal. It was ridiculous. It was basically a mini drama of the Lindros trade all over again. Almost went to arbitration. It was nonsense. But Chris Gratton became our player, and Vance just summed it up. The next player on our list is Vincent Lecavalier. We talked to him briefly last week. To me, he's a borderline Hall of Famer. I think it's just a matter of time before he gets in. The knack on him is his defensive issues might keep him out, and I think he's a negative player in his career. But he's just under 500 goals, just under 1,000 assists. You would have thought, gentlemen, he had more for his career totals, but they weren't massive like I anticipated. But when the Flyers signed Lecavalier, he was 33 years old. And again, we signed him to a 5-year deal at a significant amount. Now, last week, I recall it was in the $7 million range, but that was incorrect. It was in the $4.5 million range. But at the time, we were stuck with him for 5 years at over $4.5 million a year, and I don't believe he scored a significant amount of points with us at all. He was a complete and utter bust. And I believe Chris referenced it on our show, our guest Chris, that the Flyers put him on the wrong line from the jump. I don't know if I agree with that per se as much as you earn the line you play for. So it's, the chicken or the egg. Was he put on the third line and that's what stymied him, or did he earn, his playing time to be a third line player? So the bottom line is he was an albatross for a while. He had to waive a no trade clause, thank God. And honestly, we actually made out. We traded him and Luke Shen to the Kings. We got, at the time, a promising but underachieving Jordan Wheel, who continued that underachieving status with the Flyers. And we got a draft pick, which turned out to be Twarninski, who's now with the Flyers currently. So it was an interesting time, but ultimately we were able to get rid of him and his big contract. And it's a shame because that's how he'll be remembered, as a guy that just was a disappointment at the end of his career. Any of you want to comment on Lecavalier's time with the Flyers? Moving on then. Ilya Bryzgalov.
That pretty much summed it up. Dan.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Dan, for summing it up. All right, now probably a guy that it gives instant migraine headaches to everyone when you say his name is Ilya Bryzgalov. Not just for the contract, the other situation, which I know Nick's going to talk about, but he was a complete and utter goofball, an unlikable goofball. I remember Shane Doan, the captain of the Coyotes at the time. He was interviewed in an intermission or post game, and they've talked about, your thoughts on seeing your former teammate Ilya Bryzgalov, and Shane Doan was like indifferent. And I remember the interviewer at the time kind of was like taken aback, is you don't seem excited to see your ex-teammate, and he was like, no. And they're like, why? He goes, you'll see. And I was like, holy crap. Shane Doan is as like cool as a cucumber, modest Canadian player, typical, doesn't talk bad about anyone kind of. And I was like floored that he was that indifferent, and you can tell in a negative way towards Ilya Bryzgalov. Nick, tell us why.
Well, he was a nut. I mean, his whole. I think with that, when he came out with that interview and he was talking about the universe and how ginormous big it is and all those things, it's like, Jesus, what is with this guy? But you forget that they had just come off, a couple of seasons with the duo of Leighton and Boucher, and just obviously those two goalies did not give us enough of a push to make it through that 2010 Stanley Cup final. We were in a situation where we needed a goalie, and we didn't have the cap space for it. We couldn't go out and sign a Brizgalov. So just the day of that signing, earlier in that day, a few hours before, the Flyers made a couple of big blockbuster trades to get rid of some salary cap, with Carter, going to Columbus and bringing in Jake Voracek. It was a good trade, and at the time,
right, he had not much of a contract at the time.
Exactly. And I think it was a couple of draft picks. And then shortly after, trading Richards and his contract to the Kings, and another good trade, bringing in Simmons and Shen.
Mm-hmm.
So they were really moving and shaking, and they did what they did, and immediately thereafter they made the signing of Brizgalov for 9 years, $51 million.
Which we're still paying, right?
That they're still paying. They are absolutely still paying. But ironically enough, a couple of weeks ago we had a segment where we talked about some of the worst trades, and what made this whole deal monumentally worse was the fact that we had traded away a young, promising goaltender in Bobrovsky.
That's the hard part of it all.
So yeah, I mean, it was just a double dagger. I mean, both ends, both sides, stab you in the front, stab you in the back. I mean, it was a painful deal. I mean, it'll definitely go down in history, in Flyers history anyway, of one of the worst contracts ever. And the guy was a complete nut on top of all that.
Right. And now the next gentleman on our list are Darian Hatcher and Mike Rathje. Now, Hatcher is top right, Rathje is bottom left. It's funny, when I do these graphics, I try to find like decent pictures. I couldn't find a good full body picture of Mike Rathje for the life of me. This is the best I could do. Him taking a shot, ironically, and he was not known as a scorer. But here's why I hated these signings, and I hated it at the time, and I don't think they did much when they were on our team. This, if you recall, gentlemen, was done after the lockout. And the clutching and grabbing era was over. The era of the slow skating big men was over. So what does Bobby Clark do when every team is signing Roadrunners? He signs 3 6'5" defensemen in Rathje, Hatcher, and actually Chris Therien, who I didn't put on the list. I love Chris Therien. He's one of the sweetest men around. He's doing great things with his new addiction center, and he's a local guy. And he was at the end of his career. But the other two were just wasted signings. They were slow. Hatcher was a -24 in his second year. Never scored more than 4 goals. He had some offensive ability, but really he was on the decline for years, even with Dallas, and he spent a year with Detroit before the lockout. It was just a dumb signing. And Rathje played essentially 1 year, 1 full year, put up, I think, 3 goals. And in the following year, he just was dealing with back issues, and he only played 18 games and never played again. Honestly, he actually saved us by being hurt, because his injury saved us from cap issues. So that's why I had those two guys on the list. It was just the time that the dinosaur era was over, and we signed 2 dinosaurs. And that's why Darian Hatcher and Mike Rathje made my list. Next on the list, Vance, is Dale Weiss,
Right.
a a somewhat recent signing. I think wasn't it Hextall's first, if I recall?
I believe so. This was in 2016. Flyers signed Del Weiss to a 4-year, what was it, $2.3 million deal per year.
It's a
So
lot for a Dale Weiss.
around over $9 million. And to be honest, at the time, I never really got it because I saw Del Weiss play for Montreal, and I thought he was just a guy. So I thought it was a rather expensive deal, but what do I know? The GM went out and signed him. I'm a Flyers fan, so I roll with it. And he pretty much did absolutely nothing here in his 3.5 years. I think the highest amount of goals he scored was 8. Most amount of points he scored was 15. And he was just a guy, just a guy. Luckily, the Flyers were able in the 3.5 years, in that third year, I believe they were able to get out of the deal. They traded him back to Montreal for David Schlemko and another player. And pretty much a forgettable time in Philadelphia for Dale Weiss.
Yeah, Dale Weiss was nice as a Ranger, not as a Flyer. Even, didn't he have his better years with the Rangers?
I think he had his better years with Montreal, actually.
Was he a Ranger before Canadian?
Let me see here.
My memory could be fading, but I thought he was pretty good with the Rangers. While Vance looks up his stats, and we'll get back to Vance, Andrew McDonald is next on our list. Now, I assigned Andrew McDonald to Nick, and Nick likes Andrew McDonald. That being said, we all like Andrew McDonald. What we didn't like, as Nick will explain, is his extension. Nick?
Yeah, great communication on our part, everybody. But not that I liked Andrew McDonald, but I mean, I think he was just a really, really big target for the 5 or 6 years that he was here. It was just constant AMAC bashing. It was just easy to bash him, and people didn't even know, or watch him or really just like analyze what he did as a player. But just bash him like he was just AMAC. He stinks, and it was all because of the contract. And that's really we talked about that prior to getting onto the show. The aftermath of that contract extension after I believe it was a trade and he was acquired from the Islanders at the end of the 2014 season, and he was given an immediate contract extension for big money, 6 years, $30 million at the time. He was one of the, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, one of the top 5 highest paid defensemen in the league at that time.
Right. And the length. I mean, and the thing is,
6 years, yeah.
Paul Holmgren was really bidding against himself. No one had that type of interest in Andrew McDonald. And that was the issue.
That was exactly it. There was no need. I mean, 4 years, $25 million, could have got the 4 years, $24 million. That deal should have been done for, and we would have had a nice, the last 2 years. God, I felt so bad for the guy. I mean, I just felt all he did was just go out there and play as hard as he possibly could, and it was just, you turn on the radio, you turn on Twitter, you turn on whatever, and then it's just everything is AMAC bashing, AMAC. And he was an assistant captain on this team, and he did a good job from a leadership standpoint. But yes, when you talk about deals and we're talking about free agent signings gone wrong, which is what this segment is all about, it really came down to the length of the contract and the money that was involved. And that's why we have him, that's why we have him on the list.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate, but yeah, unfortunately these guys don't play for the fun of it. And we're not saying, hey, he's a hell of a player, that Andrew McDonald. But he wasn't a hell of a 6 year, $5 million per year kind of player, though. Vance, what did you find in your diligent research?
With you're talking about Dale Weiss. So Dale Weiss only played 1 year for the Rangers, and he never actually scored a goal.
All right, then what? I don't know.
I think you're remembering him from Montreal. Honestly.
Maybe I thought he was. Maybe I'm thinking of a different player. All right,
Yeah.
so I look like a jackass. Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. We all make mistakes. Let's close out this segment with now. It's ironic. This is the kind of guy we would love to have on this team when he was pre on this list. Matt Reed is the next player. He was, before we signed him, Vance, wasn't he an older rookie that had decent hands and speed, who turned himself into a nice professional, but then the free agent problem developed. Vance.
Yeah, so he was actually he's probably one of the best skaters in recent memory that I can remember on the Flyers. And he started out as a decent two-way player. I think he came in his rookie season, had 47 points, and kind of played well, right out of the gate, and earned himself a nice deal for the 2000s, beginning in the 2014-15 season. The Flyers gave him a 4-year, $14.5 million deal going into that season. And literally right after that, his play just dropped off the face of the earth. He really struggled over the next 4 years, to the point at one point, I believe in 2017-18, he was actually sent down to Lehigh, just to get him off the roster for a little bit, to get him a change of scenery. Is it me, or did he have a hip injury? Did he ever have a hip injury at some point? I feel like he had an injury that might have changed.
He probably had that sports hernia injury.
Okay.
But then again, I was wrong with Dale Weiss, so who knows?
Yeah, I feel like there was a point where Matt Reed had an injury. It didn't cost him his speed, but I don't feel like he was ever the same player after he had that injury. But yeah, I didn't. He's one that I thought would be a nice third line player for years to come. And that drop off in play, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming at all.
But again, I believe he was like a 25-year-old rookie, if I'm not mistaken. And real fast, to save a little face, I think the reason I had Rangers and Dale Weiss in my head, I believe that was the team that drafted him.
They were.
Okay. So that's probably why I had Rangers on the head. I think that might have been his first team. But anyway, gentlemen, I think we had a pretty solid show tonight. We talked about how we thought, how we think the Flyers are going to play out the season. We're excited about Allison. We're praying York gets called up. We went over our free agency list and what we would love to see happen and the pros and cons to all our thoughts. And we had fun in the penalty box as always, with failed free agent signings. And maybe we can do a penalty box on great free agent signings. Hint, hint. Who knows? But as always, let's enjoy the games with the Rangers. Let's cross our fingers at this stage of the game that we don't get Zibanejad and we play well, steal some points, play the spoiler role. Once again, thanks to Fuse Barbershop for sponsoring our Puck Point segment. Please check them out. Get that 20% off your first service. On behalf of Vance, Nick, I am Dan Green. As always, follow us on all socials. Subscribe on YouTube. Tap that bell. And as always, good night and good hockey. Take care, everybody.
Night.